My favorite bird language story took place last year in Washington. I was living at a property that we call the Monastery, um, and my sit spot was out on the kind of in a field. It was sort of a homestead property, and I sat underneath a big leaf maple tree, and I looked into an alder stand, and beside to the left of the alder stand in the field that I was in was the sort of the driveway, and then beyond that there was the creek. And so this particular day, I was sitting at my spot, and I started hearing robin alarming down in the creek, and it was just making a real consistent kind of tutting call. It was going tut, 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 just like that. And it was the sort of thing that I've seen around house cats and bobcats. And so it got me curious. And the next thing that I noticed, there were song sparrows in the thicket to my right, and they started just freaking out. And there were two pairs of song sparrows in there, which was unusual for that spot. And then I saw in the alders a mourning dove flushed up, and so now there were these things going on. And I noticed behind me there is a shed kind of behind where I sat, and our house cat Tully had hopped up on the shed. And so I wondered if some of the alarms might have been because of Tully, but he kind of perched up there. And the next thing that happened, everything just got really quiet. The song sparrows stopped making noise. The robin was still going, but it was off a good ways away. Like in the area where I was, everything was quiet, except for I noticed that the purple finch up in the Doug fir tree was still singing. So it was kind of like it was on the ground that it was really quiet. And I remember one of my teachers of bird language had said at one point that, sometimes when there's alarm going on, it's not necessarily that there's actual vocalizations. It might just get really quiet, and that the sort of thing that the example that he gave was, like around a mountain lion, that when there's a mountain lion in the area, that the birds just get really quiet. And so I heard this, and I was wondering, like, could that really be a mountain lion? I started having all these thoughts about mountain lions, like, well, what would happen if a mountain lion were sneaking up on me right now? I started looking around and just kind of got caught up in my thoughts for a little while. And then I noticed that I heard some rustling in the bushes on the road, kind of out of my sight. And it was obviously an animal that was moving on a trail that the deer move on. So they come up from the creek, they go over the road, and then they come into the alder stand, and they move through there pretty regularly. So I suddenly was like, oh, it must be a deer. And I was like, oh, this is great, I'm gonna get to see a deer. And so I heard the sequence as it moved across the road. There was rustling in the bushes, and then the animal was on the road, and then I heard it was just quiet, and then I heard again as it was in the thicket hopping into the alders. And then in front of me, right in plain sight in this alder stand, about 20, maybe 30 feet in front of me, appears this big 140-pound female mountain lion. And I never thought that you would be able to like hear the footfalls of a mountain lion, because they're such stealthy creatures, but you could really hear the power in its paws. It was like it kind of made that sound as it was as it was moving through the thicket. So it moved through, and it was like a big adrenaline hit when when I saw that cat. And so then it kind of disappeared out of view, and a little bit further, kind of quite a ways off to my right, I heard a robin. It kind of went, and then it was still quiet in this area. So I couldn't see the cat anymore, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it's still here because everything was really quiet. And that's when I noticed that behind me there was our house cat Tully had hopped down off the shed, and he had gone to sort of the next edge of a different forest behind where I sit at the other end of the field. And he was kind of looking into the bushes, kind of doing, like, trying to see something. And so I was really curious what he was looking at. I was wondering maybe it had gone around me, or maybe there was something else over there. And so I got up and I went back, and I went towards where Tully now was, looking into the bushes. And as soon as I got to that point where I could just turn my head and see the house, I looked, and then another mountain lion walked by with another one right on its tail. And these were the kittens. They were sort of 7 or 8 months old at that time. And they went up the trail and into that forest, and I heard a crow kind of yelling at them a little bit in the forest, and then they went on. But it stayed really quiet on the ground throughout that whole time, and even a little while after that. And then the bird song started coming back, and everything went back to normal. But that's my favorite bird language story.